Another duly noted podcast comes to you from the Coach's Podcast Room at Spurrier's Gridiron Grill in Celebration Point. Okay, and welcome into another duly noted podcast brought to you, of course, by our great friends at Titan MRI from the Meldon Law Dooley Dome Gator Studios here at my house. We appreciate all of our great sponsors. We got a good show for you today. We'll get a little bit of a look into what Kentucky football is with John Clay from the Lexington Herald-Leader. He'll also be doing our Yes, No, Where, Maybe segment. We always try to make it fun. I got a good fun one for him today. And then, of course, Coach Spurrier will be on Monday, and look forward to that as well. I think he is in Tulsa today. I think he's going to that game. Okay, so let's get right to it with our Process Service of Gainesville starting five. Brought to you by the Process Service of Gainesville Group. Scott Hart doing a great job over there, and we appreciate him for being a part of our show. Number one, let's talk about Florida at Kentucky. And, I think Kentucky's still like a 1 or 2 point favorite. It's the line hasn't moved a whole lot. My recollection was in the summer, it was like Kentucky was giving 6 or 7 maybe. So that line came down, obviously, with Florida beating Tennessee. Kentucky's a weird team to try to figure out because they, if you look at them statistically, they're not. It's like you would think this is a 2-2 team, not a 4-0 team. The teams that they have played have not been very good. We all know that. The best team they've played so far is Vanderbilt, which is 2-3. And I watched that game, a lot of that game, and Vandy didn't look very good. A.J. Swan gave him a couple of gift touchdowns. But that's the thing. Their opponents are 6-12 combined, the four of them. And they're not even like high echelon. Like Vandy's the only Power 5 team among them. The point is, I think Florida's obviously played better opponents, and maybe that'll have Florida better prepared to play a game like this. Florida's played on the road, and they've played on the road at Vandy. Golly, I'm sorry, I got a little bored there for a minute, but at Vandy, so there's an advantage for Florida. Obviously, the game's in Lexington, and but you know what, I talked about this the other night, and I think I mentioned it on the radio as well. Everybody says, "Wow, Kentucky, tough place to play, hostile crowd." You're going to have to go to a place where Florida usually doesn't play very well, and I just go, well, wait a minute. Florida always plays well there. They've lost twice since Charlie Pell went 0-10-1. Florida's lost twice since then. Once was in '86. So no, they didn't play well the last time they went there. They had 15 penalties for over 100. I think it was 115 yards. No, but I don't think it's the stadium. And look, I said this 4 weeks ago, whenever it was. If Florida had trouble with the Utah crowd, which is a loud crowd, but it's 51,000, then down the road, it makes you even more nervous because you're going to have to play in front of a lot bigger crowds. And obviously the crowd that will be here, it's not going to be as lubed up, even though, Coach Stoops has said, hey, you don't think our Kentucky fans, people in the Commonwealth, can pound beers before noon? So I don't think beers are what gets you to the hysterical state, but it's usually something else. Anyway, this Kentucky team, like I said, they're like 8th, 9th, 10th, 8th, 9th, in all these different statistical categories in the league, not in the country, in the league. And of course, Florida is kind of right there with them because Florida hasn't put up incredible offensive numbers. They've had good offensive days. They've had a good offensive possession. So to be honest with you, I picked the Gators. I have no idea what's going to happen in this game either. And I didn't have any idea in the Tennessee game, and I had no idea in the Utah game. That's kind of where we are. And I think it goes back to what I talked about a little bit last week, which is this Florida team is not going to be explosive offensively. It's going to try to grind out games, control the clock, win time of possession. And every game, probably, there may be an outlier here and there, every game is going to come down to the fourth quarter. And you just got to deal with it. I mean, just like last week's did. Nobody thought last week's would come down to the fourth quarter, but it did. I mean, they've got the ball driving with a chance to cut it to one score. So it did come down to the fourth quarter. Anyway, it is, it's. I think it's gonna be a really close game, and I will wait and see what happens. That's kind of where I am. I'm picking Florida, and a lot of it is because of the situation that, where the more you study Kentucky, the harder it is to find out what they do well, but they do a lot of things well, and they've got 3 really good wide receivers. So we'll see. We'll see what happens. And of course, Ray Davis, who transferred over from Vanderbilt, is a really good player too. Their leading rusher, tailback. So that's kind of my take on the Florida-Kentucky game. But I want to get to number 2 on the process service of Gainesville starting 5, because I was watching, believe it or not, the preview shows. This is sad for the Ryder Cup. The Ryder Cup starts Friday. But I watch like everything that's on about. I love the Ryder Cup. I love I don't like our chances. I think the European team's really good. But they were talking about the '99 President's Cup and how Michael Jordan was a captain or something. He wasn't the captain, but he was a captain's assistant or something. And one of the speeches he gave the team was about there are 2 kinds of players. There are the kinds of players who love to win at home, and they're the kind of players who love to win on the road. Now, I think that the interesting part of that is I totally agree. I talk to people all the time. I've asked players this: would you rather win at home or on the road? They almost always say home, and I always go, no, I would want to win on the road. I would want to be able to watch fans file out miserable and get on that plane and be happy and be riding home and just having a blast. But I also understand if you win at home in a big game, then you get to go right out into the streets of Gainesville and celebrate. So, but anyway, I do think that is what the bottom line is with this football team. We talked already about games are going to be close, and you're going to probably be stressed out, especially going down the stretch. But think about what this team has to go see on the road now. At Kentucky, at South Carolina, at Missouri, at LSU. Those are tough games, man. I'm not saying Florida can't win any of them. I'm not saying Florida can't lose any of them. I'm just saying it's a tough road schedule for Florida this year. The home schedule actually works out pretty well. You got Vandy coming in next week, and then Arkansas a little bit later. So, that's going to be the definition of this team in the end, is how they play on the road. They needed to get that home win, obviously, against Tennessee. So we'll see if they're able to do that. And I'm not concerned, but I'm curious to see how Graham Mertz plays on the road, because especially in this case, because it's been a lot of hoopla this week about the fact that Mertz visited Kentucky right before Devin Leary did. There's been talk that Mertz wanted to go to Kentucky, but Liam Cohen came in and said, nope. And we'll talk to John Clay about that. No, I got this guy, Devin Leary, is a guy I want to bring in. And so Mertz, there may be a little chip on his shoulder. It may make him play. You never know what chips do. Sometimes chips make you play hard. Sometimes they make you feel the pressure and not do good. Poop the bed, as we like to say. So we'll see how all that goes. It'll be certainly an interesting game at noon on Saturday. Let's get to number 3 on our process service of Gainesville starting 5. And I watched all the volleyball match last night against Texas A&M. Another 5-setter, 5 5-setters in a row. They lost, if you didn't know. Really, I told my wife, I go, because she was in another room, I said, yeah, volleyball lost. And she goes, oh, that's so sad. And I go, yeah, it is. It really is. I was telling her, I said, the Final Four is in Tampa this year. How great would that be to go down there, and Florida would have a chance and we could watch them. But, ever since Alyssa Stuckey went out, it's been rough for them. And, 3 straight SEC matches against with it went 5 sets. But I mean, they got a really good team, and I love this team. I love watching them play. It's still fun to watch them play. Don't give up on them, but it does feel like that injury has just changed everything, and it's just going to be hard for Florida to go far. But they still have a really good team and a lot of really good players. And Mary Wise is a legendary coach, and I just feel bad because I think she had a team that might have been able to win the whole thing this year. This might have been her team, and obviously it doesn't. I don't think it is now, but still could go far. And we'll keep rooting for her. Let's get to number 4 on our process service of Gainesville starting 5, and that is that Michigan State made it official and fired Mel Tucker and said for making the program a laughing stock and all the stuff. And look, this is just posturing for lawsuits. In the end, Mel Tucker will get money. It's just a matter of how much. He's not going to coach at Michigan State anymore. He probably isn't going to coach anywhere else, but you never know. Hugh Freeze is coaching in Auburn. I mean, don't forget, Hugh Freeze is the guy who cheated and then, had the burner phone to call exotic dancers. We'll just leave him at that. And I'm not saying, I mean, he certainly has apologized to his wife and his God and everything like that. And I get it. I'm not saying you can't be forgiven, but so don't quickly dismiss it. But I will say this: Hugh Freeze had a better track record as a football coach than Mel Tucker. Mel Tucker, they haven't been very good, and he kind of parlayed that one year where they were good at Colorado and went to Michigan State. Maybe Deion will be the next Michigan State coach. But anyway, so that is official. And also know this: the portal is now open for all those players. So within the next 30 days, they can jump in as players who, because our coach got fired, we can get in the portal. It's a special window. The way I understand it, 30 days you have to jump in, and again, you don't want to. Nobody's going to be just picking and choosing. They're going to go, here's the one guy we might want, because look, they're not very good, but here's the one guy we may want. Let's see if we can get him. Let's not worry about going through the entire roster. So we'll see how that goes, and if anybody ends up here or ends up at other schools, and who knows where they'll end up. And finally, number 5 on the process service of Gainesville starting 5. I wanted to mention this Tuesday night. I spoke, or I was part of a panel at the quarterback club, and it was pretty amazing. There were some amazing stories. I mean, it was me, Urban, and Brandon Spikes, and somebody put up their 3 goats on stage, and I said, well, there's 2 greatest of all times, and then there's an actual goat, but I don't know if that's true or not. Anyway, it was a lot of fun. And Brandon Spikes, man, the interesting thing about it, he still looks like he hit somebody. And I asked him the question. I go, if you and Tebow had gotten to a UFC match, who would win? He goes, Tebow, no doubt. I go, wow, I did not expect that answer. He goes, no, man. Look, Tebow was setting records in the weight room when he was a freshman. I didn't lift weights. They made me lift weights finally. Mickey Marotti made me lift weights. I didn't want to lift weights. Then I'm watching this podcast with the 2 Kelsey brothers, and that Ron Gronkowski was on. And they started talking about who hits the hardest, and they go, oh, Brandon Spikes hit harder than anybody. I wouldn't even get near him during practice because I was afraid he would pop me. He was the hardest hitter of all time. And both the brothers went, oh, there's no question. He's number 1. We don't even know who number 2 is. That's number 1. And I'm like, well, good for you, Brandon. That's great to hear that. And now we feel a little bit worse for no Sean Moreno, right? Anyway, it was a good time. Tonight, I will be speaking to the Fighting Gator Touchdown Club. Always enjoy going to see those guys. I've been going there every year for a long time. They have a blast. They do it right, and look forward to seeing a lot of my friends over there and speaking to them. And I may tell a couple of stories from the other night. So we'll see. I'm allowed to tell a couple I know I can tell. All right. That's going to do it for our process service of Gainesville starting 5. We'll be back with you in just a minute with John Clay from Lexington Paper, who does a great job on the Big Mills Cheesesteak Zoom line. And we'll talk to him about them Kentucky Wildcats and all the bourbon that's going to be drank. What is it? Is it drank? All the bourbon that will be consumed by 12 o'clock on Saturday. We'll be right back more with another Dooley Noted podcast presented by Titan MRI from the Meldon Law Gator Studios.
Process Service of Gainesville offers a rapid turnaround on affidavits of service for Gator lawyers locally and nationwide. Our friend Scott Hart offers immediate responses on status requests and is a member of NAPS and FAPS. And he has been a part of the community for almost 2 decades. Need service? Call Process Service of Gainesville at 407-697-9592 or email shartgators, that's G8TR, at yahoo.com. And make sure you ask about the paralegal legal secretary bonus program.
Hello there, everybody. I'm Pat Dooley, of course, from another Dooley Noted podcast. And this is a great Adam Brewer, and he's just opened up a place here, Adam Brewer To Go. What gave you the idea to do this, to have a to-go place like this?
We really like the fast concept, being able to get the barbecue. Now we have this new online ordering. So before it was a call ahead carry out, quick service. We have like a curbside kind of a deal where everything's ready to go for you. And then we thought, wow, we have a really great dine-in concept, but how can we make this streamlined for the customer and make it easy and accessible for all parts of town?
Adam's Rib Co. To Go. Come on down and enjoy it.
Great food, great atmosphere, a diverse menu, everything made from scratch, plenty of space, and locally owned. These are all the characteristics of a great restaurant, and you can find each and every one of them right here in Gainesville at Ballyhoo Grill. Ballyhoo Grill prepares all of their food fresh every day, from their salad dressing to their award-winning soups. Bring your family and enjoy dinner under the Tim Trebo Tiki Hut while listening to live music. Or if you're running low on time to eat out, they also deliver through Uber Eats, Spite Squad, and Postmates. A Gainesville staple that's been open for over 30 years. Check out Ballyhoo Grill on Facebook or at ballyhoogrill.com.
Okay, welcome back to another Dooley Noted podcast presented by Titan MRI from the Meldon Law Dooley Dome Gator Studios. Doing it from home again today on Thursday. And it's always our pleasure to bring in a great guest, and we've got one today. John Clay, who does a magnificent job covering the Cats and has been been there forever. How long have you been doing this, John, up in lovely Lexington?
Well, I started at the paper in full-time in 1981. I started covering UK football. I got the football beat in 87 when your friend and mine, Jerry Tipton, they decided basketball was so big that Jerry should cover it full-time. They gave me the football beat in 87, and I got the columnist job in 2000. So, yeah, I've been there a while.
Yeah, did Jerry retire recently?
Jerry retired after not this past season, but the season before. I have lunch with Jerry about once a week. He's doing great. He has transitioned into retirement very well. We wondered about him. He had done the UK basketball for so long. He was so wrapped up in it that we wondered about it, but he's made the transition very smoothly. I'm happy to report.
Well, I love that you see him with these notebooks with just all kinds of notes in them, and somehow it would end up being a 60-inch notes column on Sunday.
On Sunday. It was a Sunday staple in the Herald-Leader, Jerry's basketball notebook, 12 months a year.
Yeah, these were the old days when there were papers that were coming out
right.
with print and everything like that. But, John, let's talk about this. And, of course, John coming to us on our Big Mills Cheesesteak Zoom line. Let's talk about this Florida-Kentucky game. And I know Coach Stoops has said he has no doubt that the fans will get lubed up for a noon game. They can pound the beer, although I think the bourbon is what's going to get them fired up the most. But I mean, what do you think about it being noon? I think a lot of us thought it would be the 7 o'clock game or even the 3:30 game. It's a better game than Georgia Auburn. Let's face it.
Yeah. Back to your original point, fans here are not happy with the noon start. Yes, Mark Stoops did say he had full confidence that Kentuckians can get up early and pound beer. leading up to the noon kickoff. And then on his radio show that night, he said he wanted to make a slight clarification. He didn't mean to leave out bourbon. You could use bourbon too. Bourbon was perfectly acceptable too. Pat, this is the first year that they've got beer sales in Commonwealth Stadium, now Kroger Field. Before, you could have alcohol in the suites, but they didn't sell it, in the general stands. But this is the first year that they've done that. So, yeah, that'll help them get lubed up as well, both before and during the game. Yeah, I think, if you remember the game 2 years ago, it was a night game, tremendous atmosphere. I think Florida ended up with like 6 or 7 illegal procedure or pre-snap penalties in that game. Had a hard time
15 penalties, yes.
Yeah, exactly. Hard time hearing the signals and so forth. So, yeah, noon makes it a little different. The fans may not quite be as loud as they are during a night game. I was a little surprised too, but it is what it is. You got to play them at 12 o'clock. You got to play them when TV rules these days. TV says 12 o'clock, so they're going to play at 12 o'clock.
Hey, the TV's a good thing they didn't say 9 o'clock because there's some teams playing at 9 o'clock.
Absolutely. Right.
But it is what it is. I did want to ask you about the quarterback thing, which has become a big story this week because Graham Mertz obviously went to Lexington and met with those guys, and they ended up with Devin Leary. And there's been a lot of talk that Mertz was ready to come to Kentucky, but obviously Liam Cohen came in and wanted Leary instead. I don't how much of that is true and how much of it is just out there.
Well, I think a good part of it is true. I think that Kentucky really liked Mertz when he came in for his visit. There was a lot of speculation here that Mertz was the guy, and that Liam wanted Mertz, that he was the guy that Liam wanted. But then Leary came in the portal. I don't know if at first they didn't think they could get Leary, that he wasn't interested in Kentucky. But then when it came evident to them that Leary was, he could come to Kentucky if they wanted him. That's who the guy that they ended up with. The Kentucky coaches, of course, I know a lot of it's coach speak, but they've been very complimentary of Mertz. Mark Stoops, and we were talking with Brad White yesterday, especially about the way he's taking care of the ball. And everything we've heard before, everything we heard is that he, that they really liked him. It was just that they liked Leary maybe a little bit better. But to be honest with you, Devin's gotten off to a rocky start. He's not, he has the reputation of being a pinpoint passer, a very accurate passer. Right now, he's under 60% in completion percentage. He threw 2 interceptions last week against Vanderbilt. There have been several instances where he's not been on the same page with his receivers. I think it's easy to forget he had a fairly complicated surgery not even a year ago on that torn pectoral muscle. He's in a new offense with Liam Cohen as his offensive coordinator. He's got a new group of receivers, and he's been hard on himself as well. After the game at Vanderbilt, he said, I got to play better. I know who we're playing coming up, starting with Florida. The competition in the SEC, I haven't been in the SEC, but I know how strong it is. I got to play better. He's been kind of his own worst critic to this point. So, yeah, it's going to be a really interesting matchup between those two quarterbacks with the backstory about how both, visited Kentucky when they were in the portal.
Absolutely. It is. Kentucky's a hard team to figure if you just look at stats. And I know the great Steve Spurrier once said stats are for losers and assistant coaches, but they're also for sports writers. And I look at them and, Kentucky's 8th and 9th and 10th in the conference in almost every category. And you go, yeah, but they're 4-0. And I know that they haven't played the greatest competition, but they still have not really had tough games that came down the stretch. And they do appreciate A.J. Swan throwing those 2 of the worst pick sixes I've ever seen in my life. But, what do you think of this team so far through 4 games?
You're right. They played a pretty soft schedule. They've shown they've got some big play capability in their receivers in Barian Brown and Dane Key. Ray Davis has been really good for him. He's shown he's got big play capability. Running back who came over Vanderbilt, as you mentioned, Maxwell Hairston, a couple of pick sixes in the Vanderbilt game. They returned a fumble for a touchdown against Ball State, so they've been opportunistic on defense. They haven't been very consistent. Their biggest problem on offense is they can't, they're always in 2nd and long, Pat. The first down, they're losing yardage or only a yard or 2. Liam, kind of in frustration, said after the Vanderbilt game, if we can't run the ball on first down, I'm not going to call running plays on first down. We're really throwing the ball more than I want to, but we've been in those situations. They need to be more consistent. They need to be tighter, especially against a team like Florida. Defensively, they've been very good against the run. They've held all 4 of their first opponents under 100 yards. part of that's misleading. They got off to a big lead at Vanderbilt. Vanderbilt had to throw the ball, and that went bad for Vanderbilt. That kind of kept the numbers down. I think that's going to be a big key going into this game. Florida runs the ball well. Brad White was talking yesterday about Florida's backs. Big physical backs are hard to tackle. Billy Napier wants to play a physical, hard-nosed style of football, the way Mark Stoops was talking about that on Monday. So I think a lot of it's going to come down to that. But yeah, it's hard to tell because they haven't really played anybody to this point, and they haven't looked great in the 4 games that they've played. You take away the 2 pick sixes against Vanderbilt, it's almost an even game. So we'll find out a lot about Kentucky on Saturday afternoon.
Yeah, and that's the thing. I feel that's the same way about Florida. I mean, because and again, I want to ask you about Kentucky's offensive line this year, but Florida's offensive line, this will be only the second game where their center is going to be back for it. Kingsley Eguaquin, who is again, he seems to be just a little turn of the ankle away from having to come back out because he's been battling that problem. They had 2 guys suspended for the first half of the last game. One of them they didn't even let play the second half. They were mad at him because he went all fisticuffs on him. You know, he was going to fight him for the honor of his wife. You know, but when they were together for the 1 game so far, they dominated. The offensive line did. And I'm sure that's a concern for Coach White and for Kentucky fans. And so can you talk about that a little bit? And also, Kentucky's offensive line was a problem last year. Has it gotten better this year?
Yeah, I mean, on your first point, yeah, I mean, Brad White said it yesterday. This game's going to be a line of scrimmage game. Most games are a line of scrimmage game, but this will definitely be a line of scrimmage game because of what Florida wants to do and what they did against Tennessee. And how Kentucky stands up against that run. Like you say, the numbers look good. They look really good for Kentucky on defense, especially run defense, but they haven't had anywhere near the challenge that they're going to face against Florida. As far as Kentucky's offensive line, it was terrible last year. You know, they refer to the offensive line around here as the big blue wall during the John Schlarman days. You know, sadly, John passed away. Zach Inser is in his 2nd year as the offensive line coach. They made some changes this year, and they've already backtracked on some of those changes. They moved Jagger Burton from offensive guard to center during the spring. They moved Eli Cox, who was the center, back to guard, the position he played before. But that had some terrible snaps in games, especially the Akron game. Some problems in the interior of the offensive line, so they went back to Eli Cox at center, moved Jagger Burton back to guard. They thought that was a little better, but they didn't seem to be real thrilled with how that worked last week either. They picked up Marcus Cox in the transfer portal, left tackle from Northern Illinois. He's played well. He's been solid. Jeremy Flax, their starting right tackle, who they brought in people over the transfer portal thinking they would beat Flax out. He's played better this year. They'd love to have Kenneth Horsey back. He's their most experienced offensive lineman. He's been out. He got hurt in the opener. We haven't seen him since. Mark comes from the Bill Belichick school of telling you what's going on with injuries. He doesn't like to tell you anything about injuries. We asked about Horsey on Monday's availability. He said, we'll see. From what we hear, we don't expect him to be. We'll be surprised if Horsey is out there on Saturday. But that is, they only have 4 sacks leading up to this game. But I think Leary's been really good about with his pocket presence of getting rid of the ball and feeling the rush, really better than Will Levis was last year. So I think that is kind of misleading too. And they haven't played a knockdown, drag out defensive line either, who was able to get to the passer. So that I agree with Brad White. It's going to be a line of scrimmage game, whether you're running or passing. Whoever's offensive line plays the best on Saturday, I think will win.
That is interesting because in the last several years, obviously it's always been about, Kentucky's going to run the ball, Florida's going to pass the ball, and now it's kind of almost the opposite. And I know that Kentucky wants to run it more, but Florida's going to run it, and they're going to keep running it. And they'll show patience to the level where you think of it as stubbornness more than, But it'll be interesting to see how all that goes. But it is such an interesting game because you all are aware of the 31 game streak, and now all of a sudden Kentucky's won 3 of the last 5. And so I mentioned this in the first segment. Somebody was asking me, man, we never play good up in Lexington. And I go, you've only lost twice there since Charlie Pell's 0-10-1 year. You've had close calls, as we know.
Right.
Doring's got a touchdown, leaving wide receivers wide open, not covering them. The Kyle Trask year, if Felipe doesn't get hurt,
Right.
Kentucky wins that game. But isn't like Kentucky has won a bunch of games there in Lexington.
Right. No, and this will be Kentucky. Pat, we've been around for a long time, but we weren't around 1948 through 51, which was the last time Kentucky won 3 straight over Florida. They actually won 4 straight when Bear Bryant was the coach. We've seen so many of those 73-7, 65-0 games where Steve Spurrier was making statements like, well, Kentucky's got a good punter. You got to give them that. They got a good punter. But so stuff like that. So the fact that I'm sitting here thinking Kentucky could actually beat Florida 3 times in a row almost seems unimaginable. But some of those games, especially up here, have been closer. One game people forget about is in the Rich Brooks year. I think Kentucky had like a 21-3 lead or something like that going into the fourth quarter. Chris Leak, I think that was the big Chris Leak game.
It was his first start, yeah.
Yeah, Jared Lorenzen, I think, tried to throw a pass left-handed, making a play, got intercepted. People forget in that game, Kentucky punted, or I think Florida punted to Kentucky, but Kentucky had 12 men on the field, and that gave Florida a first down and kept a drive alive, if I remember correctly, in that game. So there have been some close games. I go way back to when Fran Kersey, I wasn't writing them, but when I was a kid growing up, was the coach, and they used to play in November. And Fran used to switch sides. He would put Kentucky on the sidelines with the sun, and he'd make Florida be on the sidelines where in the shadows, and you would see the Florida players over just shivering because they were not used to November in Kentucky, while Kentucky ended up winning a couple of those games. So that's how far I go back. Can't do that anymore. They don't let you do that stuff anymore.
Yeah. Fran Kersey is still never got over the loss to Florida in '80 when Florida kicked a field goal at the buzzer, yes. And he swears Chris Collinsworth wasn't inbounds on the catch that got him down there.
I was on the sidelines then. I was for the Colonel, the UK paper. And yes, I remember that vividly. Collinsworth caught the sideline pass. Fran thought he was out of bounds. He went to throw his program. He was going to throw his program at the official that he had rolled up, and he did a somersault. He caught himself, and he did a somersault. So, yeah. So Collinsworth was at a speaking engagement here. Oh, it's been a few years back. And when we were talking to him afterwards, and I brought that up to him, and of course, Chris said, oh, I was in bounds. I was definitely in bounds. So.
Fran didn't know there wasn't a challenge flag. He was using his program. And again,
right.
Sometimes you think back to some of the great plays in history, and if there was instant replay, who knows how differently this game, that game would have turned out. But right. we have plenty of reviews now. We don't have to worry about
Yeah, we don't need any more of those.
No, but it is interesting this series for Kentucky to do this. And I would think, let me ask you about Coach Stoops, because I mean, people have come after him, and Kentucky continues to give him what he needs, and they've done a heck of a job. And we try to use what Kentucky did with the ledge people, and I call them the ledge people because they're the ones on the ledge, and they really have 1 foot over when Florida loses a game. And we keep trying to use this. Look what Kentucky did. Look what FSU did. You stayed with the guy. You don't keep changing coaches. It doesn't work. Auburn. It didn't work for Tennessee for a long time. Finally, they seem to have gotten the right guy in there. But, in the case of Stoops, he seems really happy with where he is and what he's doing. And sometimes you go somewhere else and it doesn't work out. Now you're back at Appalachian State or something.
No, I mean, he's done a tremendous job here. I mean, a friend of mine said this, and I repeat this all the time. You really have to be a long-time Kentucky football fan to really appreciate the job Mark has done. I mean, he's built it from the foundation up. They've improved their facilities, which is something Rich Brooks was frustrated that he couldn't get done when he was here. Mark's been able to do that. They built a new training center a couple of years ago. They just redid their field house to make it exclusively for football, where it used to be football and track and field. They renovated the stadium a few years ago. He's done a great job of identifying players that he feels like could fit in the program and that he can develop. I can remember, Pat, back during one of the Kentucky coaching changes, our sports editor had the idea of, why don't you call around to these programs who have turned it around and find out how they did it. So I called the guy who covered Kansas State for a long time, and I said, how did Bill Snyder do it at Kansas State? And he said, number one, Bill Snyder works all the time. He never takes a day off. And number two, he's a great evaluator. People talk about recruiters. It's better to be a great evaluator. And he was a great evaluator in knowing who would fit his program, who he could develop. And Mark has done that. When you think about Josh Allen, when you think about Jamin Davis, guys who were 2-3-star recruits and not a lot of people wanted, and ended up being first-round draft picks. The big question is here, can he take it to the next level? It's harder that's the hardest step of all, take it to the next level. They'd like to be able to go to Atlanta, but they can't beat Georgia. Mark is over against Georgia since he's been here. They've taken advantage of the fact that Florida and Tennessee has been down a little bit the last few years, but now Tennessee, like you said with Josh Heupel, I think the Kentucky people feel like that Billy Napier is going to get it going there at Florida. He's recruited really well. I don't think Mark knows Billy really well, but I think he really likes what he's doing because they kind of think alike about being a physical football team that can run the ball and play good defense. So, and now you got Texas and Oklahoma coming in the league, so it's going to be tough. But overall, I mean, he's the winningest coach in Kentucky history. It's not a great history. It's not filled with glory, but he's the winningest coach in Kentucky history. So I think overall, people here appreciate the job that Mark has done.
Mainly because Bear Bryant left. That's how he got to be the winningest coach. And Spurrier never coached there because he's the winningest coach everywhere else he went. But no, he's done a tremendous job. Let us before we let John Clay go, it is time for us to play Yes, No Way, or Maybe, brought to you by Big Mill's Cheesesteaks, street dining done the right way. Go in there and say, I watched another Dooley Noted podcast. You get free fries with your order. Okay, we'll start with number one on Yes, No Way, or Maybe. John, Kentucky will be in a New Year's Six game this year.
I would say no. I'm not optimistic that would happen. I think they play in a good bowl, but I'm not sure. I think a New Year's Six bowl might be just out of their reach.
Well, and again, because they don't have those non-con wins that help you with the committee, and the committee is doing it. It's not like people just are.
Although they have Louisville at the end of the year, and Jeff Brom's got it going. When Jeff Brom got the Louisville job, we asked Mark, how do you feel about Jeff Brom being at Louisville? He goes, I hate it. First of all, I know Jeff. I really like him. And second, he's a good coach. And he's off to a great start at Louisville, and they play them at the end of the year.
Are they matter that Brom went there or that when Pitino went to Louisville? Because I remember that was.
No, they're matter when Pitino went to Louisville. Very much so. They've still not given. They will never forgive. There's a portion of the fan base that will never forgive Pitino for going to Louisville.
Yeah, I'm not surprised by that at all. And now they're anti-St. John's, right?
That's right.
Because he's the coach there.
That's right.
Number two on Yes, No Way, or Maybe. The USFL and XFL have announced a merger, and I've been told the new name is going to be Twitter. Yes, no way, or maybe.
I would say yes. Why not? Might as well. It's out there.
Yeah.
Is Elon Musk going to be the commissioner of this new league? Or I thought that he'd have to fight The Rock over it. Isn't The Rock involved with this?
I know who's winning that fight.
Yeah, I would. Yeah, me too.
Yeah, there's not much of a question there.
No.
All right, and finally, number three on Yes, No Way, or Maybe, the U.S. wins the Ryder Cup, breaking the drought of winning in Europe.
It's funny. I read a thing about that today. Paul Doherty, if you remember Paul from the Cincinnati Enquirer, Paul's retired, but he still writes. He's a big golf guy. He predicted that the U.S. will win. He knows more about it than I do. So I'm going to say yes, that they will break that European drought and the Ryder Cup U.S. team will win.
Look, I hope they do. Again, they only have to tie this year because they won last time.
Is that the way it works?
Yeah, if you tie, you retain the cup. But we'll see how that goes. You're not a big golf guy, I know. That's why I
no. I mean, I'll pay attention to it, but I'm not. I'm not like you, Pat. I'm not.
So you're not getting up at 1:30 Friday morning to watch.
Probably not. No, probably not. If I wake up, I might turn it on, but I'm not going to wake up to turn it on. No.
I think maybe a Kentucky basketball game would be the only thing that gets you up at 1:30 in the morning because everybody would want to know what you think about it.
Pretty much, I've done that before when they play late. Not very many times, thankfully, but yeah.
Yeah, just like the night of the Chiozza shot. I think I got to bed at 4 in the morning. Those are fun.
Oh wow.
Yeah. All right, John. Always great talking to you, buddy. And we feel a lot smarter about Kentucky football now that we've had you on the show. And appreciate you as always. Anytime I can help you, let me know.
Well, same here. I don't guess you'll be here Saturday, Pat?
I don't travel anymore, young man.
Well, Mark Stoops was asking you to pound those beers at home.
Well,
before the game.
And as soon as the game is over, I will. I do have to write a little bit, but then we'll start pounding, and I'll do my duty for Mark Stoops.
There you go. Okay.
Thanks a lot, buddy. We'll be
Thank
back
you,
with
Pat.
more of another Dooley Noted podcast presented by Titan MRI from the Meldon Law Dooley Dome.
I was driving behind a lady, and very suddenly she moved out of the way. There was a log laying in the road, and when I hit my brakes, I went on top of the log. I had 2 herniated discs. I just haven't been the same since. Jeffrey Meldon fought for me all the way. Him and his team really went there for me. Throughout the whole lawsuit, he made sure that my bills was paid. It was never no whenever I called him and asked him for something.
Call Meldon Law right now.
Gator fans, football season is here. What's better than seeing the Gators back on the field? Easy. Seeing amazing speakers and fellow Gator fans weekly at the Gainesville Quarterback Club. Held every Tuesday night of a home game at the Best Western Gateway Grand. Enjoy happy hour, great food, valuable insights from yours truly and Andy Staples, plus notable speakers throughout the season. As the oldest Gator booster club in the world, Gainesville Quarterback Club gives you access to elite speakers like coaches, NCAA football insiders, Gator greats, and more. Share your passion for Gator football with hundreds of other members at weekly in-season meetings, home tailgates, and special events throughout the year. Join the Gainesville Quarterback Club today. Email the club at membership@quarterbackclub.org or visit thequarterbackclub.org. Or better yet, just give me a call and I'll get you to the right people.
Things have certainly got a little out of hand lately when it comes to just buying our everyday necessities. Just look at gas, streaming services, and heck, even chicken wings. Well, there is one necessity that shouldn't cost a ton: taking care of yourself and helping fix all the aches and pains in life. And the fine folks at Titan MRI agree. With costs a fraction of what you'd pay at a hospital, you'll not only save money, you'll be taken care of by staff with over 20 years experience. So when you need an MRI, call Titan first, and you can go where your doctors send their families. Now offering CAT scans.
Okay, welcome back to another Dooley Noted podcast presented by Titan MRI from the Meldon Law Dooley Dome Gator Studios here at the Ponderosa. We are ready to do all of our fun stuff that we do in the third segment. We appreciate again John Clay being on the show today. He was great, always has great insight into Kentucky. Let's start off with Hester and Kipke's 3 things. And as you know, Hester and Kipke is a Gainesville law firm specializing in the areas of workers' compensation and family law. Ken and Jennifer take great pride in their one-to-one focus on each and every client they represent. Ken is board certified in workers' compensation law by the Florida Bar, while Jennifer possesses extensive jury trial experience with a nearly 20-year background as a prosecutor. Don't believe me? Well, check out their 5-star Google reviews. Set an appointment at hklawfl.com, or better yet, give them a call at 352-339-9920. Hesser and Kipke. Let's get to their 3 things. Number 1 was the passing of Brooks Robinson. That meant a lot to a lot of people. Yes, I was not a big Orioles fan, but I was a Brooks Robinson fan. I mean, we saw him in that World Series, one of the greatest performances ever. All those backhanded stuff. He was just an amazing third baseman. Scott Van Pelt told a great story on Twitter. I'm sure he told it on the show about his dad catching a foul ball from Brooks Robinson, and then him going home and throwing it around with people, and it went down a storm drain. That happens all the time. And he told this story at a banquet, and there was somebody who worked with Brooks Robinson at the banquet, and a week later or so, arrives in the mail box of 6 balls or a dozen balls signed by Brooks Robinson with a note from Brooks saying, "I hope this makes up for it." That is cool, man. That tells you the kind of guy that he was, and it tells you the kind of guy. Everybody's got great stories to tell about him. I haven't heard one negative one yet. I've never met him, but it certainly felt like a little bit of everybody's childhood that is my age, kind of passing away in the night. Number 2 on Hester and Kipke's 3 things. Giant trade yesterday. Damian Lillard gets traded, will be with the Bucks now, and 9 other guys get traded. And I don't know how big a deal any of them others are. I don't pay attention to regular season basketball in the NBA, but it was an interesting stat I saw. Lillard and Giannis together will be only the second time that a team will have 2 players who averaged 30 points in their previous season on the same team. You know who the other one was? Jerry West and Elgin Baylor. Let me tell you what, that's when I fell in love with the Los Angeles Lakers. When they got Elgin Baylor, and then, of course, Kareem came. That's when I was a big Lakers guy, and I loved watching the winning time thing, except that half of it was it wasn't even like they had to keep putting things up there that go, this really happened, and they would show something outrageous, and I'm like, well, you showed something outrageous 5 minutes ago. Are you saying that didn't happen? Because it wasn't very factual. Let's just put it that way. But the scores were factual, and the championships and the games won were factual. So I did enjoy it, that part of it. But I used to love the Lakers. Till they traded Shaq. When they traded Shaq, dumped them. I dumped them like girls used to dump me. All right, let's get to number 3 on Hester and Kipke's 3 things, and that is that my man Ronald Acuna last night became a member of the 40-70 club. There's no other member of the 40-70 clubs, 40 homers and 70 ribbies. There's not a member of the 40-60 club. In fact, there's not a member of the 40-50 club. There's only Ronald Acuna at 40 and 70. Some people were upset because they stopped the game to take the base, send it to the Hall of Fame and all that. And it was a big point in a very important game for the Cubs. Not important for the Braves, but the Braves did clinch home field. Now, I care about that right now, but the bottom line is you got to get to the home field. You got to get to where you're playing in the World Series against somebody. You know, the Orioles were the team that they were closest to, then the Dodgers in terms of the NL. But you got to get to that first. I'm ready for it. I'm ready for baseball. I'm ready for playoff baseball, man. I'm fired up for it. But, I mean, as good as the Braves are and as relentless as they are, these last 2 games had no chance to win and won both of them. The pitching is still very shaky, especially with all the injuries they've had. So look, I hope they win. I'm going to be watching every game and losing my mind. In fact, sometimes Jeff and I are watching them while we're doing the radio show. I'll just start beating on the console, and people can't. Why is that noise coming? Well, it's me because the Braves just scored a big run. Anyway, fun. All right, let us get to our Leonardo. That's the Hester and Kipke 3 things. Thanks to Hester and Kipke as always. Let's get to our Leonardo's and Millhopper quick pick. It'll be an easy one for you, and you have to have the quick pick in by Saturday morning. I'll give you Friday, okay? So Saturday morning, or actually Friday at midnight. Let's just leave it at that. I'm not going to give you all day Saturday to watch games, or to watch the Ryder Cup is what I'm talking about. I know I could get to it eventually. The Ryder Cup starts at 1:35. I'll give you Friday. You can look at the results. They'll probably be 4-4 anyway, or it's 5-3 one way. The singles are what really matters, but you have until midnight Friday to get your picks in. We were flooded with picks for the Thursday night game tonight, and so after we make these picks, I think we'll go ahead and pull on Monday. What do you think? I looked over like I was going to see Zach there, and Zach's, of course, not here. He's elsewhere. But yeah, so I think we'll go ahead and make a pull Monday. Somebody will win $25 at Leonardo's. Always a good deal there. And then also get a hat from the Bob Dooley Invitational, which everybody who's gotten them loves them. They are great hats. I wear mine all the time. So that's your pick. Who wins the Ryder Cup? Very simple. Europe, United States. If you put Belgium, I'm not going to count that. If you put Taiwan, I'm not going to count that either. Okay. United States, Europe, United States. Pick one. Let's get to our Adam's Ribco to go Gator of the week. We appreciate Adam. Thinking about Adams tonight, actually. It's not a bad decision to be making for dinner after I speak to the Fighting Gator Touchdown Club. All right. I lost my train of thought there. Adam's Ribco to go. I got thinking about Adam's Ribs. That's why. Adam's Ribco to go. In fact, I'm going to have him Sunday. I'm speaking to Chris Connor's group Sunday, and Adams is catering it. So I am going to get Adam's Rib for sure this weekend, maybe twice. Our winner is of the Adams Rip Code to Go Gator of the Week is Mace. Is it Macy? I don't even know how to say your name. Is it Macy or Mace or Mayiz or Mays? Anyway, Filler. She's a Florida women's golfer and really good and has played well. She's been the Adams Rip Code to Go Gator of the Week in the past. I know that, but nobody's corrected me on her name, so I'm going to go with Macy. Okay. She finished second in the Glass City Invitational. Florida rallied to win that. So good win in the fall season for Coach Glazer's group. And to win that was a big deal. They were back. They were in fourth place, I think, going to the back nine and shot 200 on the back nine. And she was the leader on that. So she is our Adams Rip Code to Go Gator of the Week. Let's go to This, That, and the Other. This, That, and the Other, as always, brought to you by Ironwood Golf Course. Also brought to you by Ballyhoo Grill, where I have eaten last week, and we'll eat again. I love Ballyhoo Grill. And, of course, by our friends at Shakow Insurance. Thank you all for being sponsors of another Dooley Noted podcast. So I do appreciate it. This is that when Dansby Swanson was in college, I hated him. He played for Vanderbilt. I know other people in my circle who did not like him, mainly because he played for Vanderbilt. It's like when we talk about Dion. Well, I don't like Dion. It's not because he's a bad person or he's too flashy or anything else. It's because he played for FSU. That's the biggest reason. I mean, I know he doesn't consider himself a Knoll anymore, but he played there. I saw him play against Florida, so I don't like him. And he made us do this, the job. If he never played for the Braves, that may not be a part of our. Anyway, so I didn't like him. Let's put it that way. Then that is, of course, he becomes a Braves shortstop. They draft him. He becomes their shortstop. And I loved him, Lieutenant Dan. And I thought he was the greatest guy in the world. And I loved how, he reminded me when he was with the Braves a little bit of what Rivera was for Florida this year. He made not only the routine plays, but the really tough plays. And that's what Rivera struggled with, was he could make some great plays, but he struggled with the routine plays and got really good at it. And batting average picked up, and also his power. And that's what Dansby Swanson was able to do. So loved him being part of our World Series champions. But then, of course, he left and went to the Cubs. So I had to hate him again. But then I went, maybe you shouldn't hate players as much as you do. When he came back to Atlanta and came up for his first at bat, they gave him a standing ovation. And I said, you know what, Pat? I like Dansby Swanson. Nothing wrong with him. There's something wrong with you, because you're the one who hates people based on where they go to school. Just watch the games. Anyway, that is This, That, and the Other. Brought to you by Ironwood, by Shakow Insurance, and by Ballyhoo Grill. Let's get to our swamp games of the weekend. We will not be out there Thursday because it's a road game, but we will be out there the following Thursday. Actually, I won't be able to make it. I'm giving a talk in Palatka. I think either Robbie or Paul Gardner will be there with Jeff Cardozo, but they'll be having a good time. I promise you. They always have a good time out at the swamp. And Sangria Saturday is still in effect. Free beer night, all that stuff is where people go to watch games. No doubt about it. So the swamp games of the weekend will give you the Friday night game is the best game. Tomorrow night, maybe of the whole weekend, which is cool. I like that when they have good Friday night games. Utah against Oregon State, 10 versus 19. It's on at 9 on FS1. So you have to stay up late. And if you have to stay up late, then you're probably not going to get up early to watch the Saturday of the Ryder Cup. But, maybe you just don't sleep. Or you could do what Ron Zook used to do. Sleep fast. That's what he used to say. I only got 3 hours sleep. Well, aren't you tired? No, I sleep fast. I think I'm introducing him in about 3 weeks at the quarterback club. That may not go well. I'll think of some really nice things to say. I've talked well of Ron Zook. I think Ron Zook is underrated as a Florida coach. He followed Spurrier. Let me tell you what, those 3 years weren't that bad. I think they won 8 and 7 games, but we all know that they were not up to standard. And then Florida lost their standard kind of after Urban Meyer left. Anyway, that's a long story for another day. All right, so here we go. On Saturday, the SEC best game. Again, Florida, we know Florida, Kentucky, the game we're all going to be watching. It's on ESPN. It's at noon. Unfortunately, Joe Testor is doing it, so sound will be off. I'm going to have to probably get I'm going to have to figure out how to sync it up to get it on the radio. But we also have LSU at Ole Miss is a game I can't wait to see. 6 o'clock on ESPN. Now, the great thing is if Florida wins and you're happy and you want to go out to dinner and you make sure you go somewhere where the game's on, or you're just sitting back and enjoying your evening, and then you have a great game on. It's so much more fun to watch, isn't it? When the Gators have won their game earlier that day, and this is the first noon game, which could be a factor in this one. But anyway, that's at 6 o'clock on ESPN. The national game, Notre Dame at Duke, that's where game day is 7:30 on NBC. And then I did want to sneak in another SEC game because the SEC's got the best games this week. There's no doubt about it. And that is the Tennessee-South Carolina game at Tennessee. And you would think they'll handle South Carolina, but and you would think that the revenge factor will be up in play. But look, we just watched Tennessee a couple weeks ago. We're not sure how good they are. This could be a really interesting game. It's at 7:30 on the SEC network. So the TVs will be fired up. Actually, Karen just got a new TV because our daughter changed apartments, and she's got TVs in them already. So she gave Karen a TV. So Karen has another TV. So I got a little TV I can put in here. Now I can have 3 TVs. Hey, me. Can't wait. All right. Let us get to our Gainesville Quarterback Club. Great picks. Now, I don't know what my record is because I picked the Friday games already. And but I was doing really well. I think I'm 13-8. But we'll see how we do on this one. I am I need to get a pen to underline these. Okay, here we go. Because I'm picking Florida. I picked them everywhere, and so I'm picking. I'm being consistent. I don't have any real special reason for it. I do know they've had good practices this week. I'm not sure how good Kentucky is. I think the biggest thing I'm giving to Florida is Florida's played tougher teams. When you play Tennessee and Utah and play against those teams, especially a Utah defense, you're going to be a little more steeled for what you're having to deal with in Lexington. Kansas at Texas. Texas is giving a ton of points, and I think they're going to cover. I think they're giving 20. I got to double check that. I'm going to still take Texas. I think they're going to roll. I think Kansas is still good. They're really good. I love their coach, but I think Texas is going to roll. USC at Colorado. Again, Colorado getting a lot of points at home. But I think we found out about the flaw of the transfer portal that they've done is they got a lot of guys who hadn't played other places and now we're coming there. I mean, certainly the guys at Jackson State had played, several others had played sometime, and their depth is a problem for Colorado. So I'm going to go ahead and take USC, even giving up that many points. And then Alabama at Mississippi State. Alabama, huge favorite there as well. And yeah, I don't know how many points because I didn't look them up, but I know about how many. Okay, you caught me in a lie, but I think they're like 18-point favorites. I think Mississippi State's 14th best team in the SEC. How about that? So I'm taking Alabama. I'm taking some big favorites, and that may not work out for me. Sometimes it doesn't. All right, finally, Pat Dooley story time as always. Brought to, oh, by the way, I should have mentioned this. The Gainesville Quarterback Club is going to have Peter Burns is going to be their speaker on Monday. So it was supposed to be somebody else. I'm not going to mention who, but it was supposed to be somebody else, and I predicted he wouldn't come, and then he canceled. But anyway, it'll be Peter Burns, and that'll be a blast. I love Peter. He's a great guy. So that'll be cool. Of course, he's been on this podcast many times. All right. So just so you know, and then I think Doring's after that, and then I think Bates. So, man, that's going to be fun. A lot of our guests, and we share guests. There's no doubt about that. Let's get to Pat Dooley story time, brought to you by Eastlake Pediatrics. Of course, we appreciate Mike Jordan, and Mike Jordan's going to appreciate this story because This is a story about music. Last night, I get a text from my daughter, my oldest daughter who lives in California. And she goes, yeah, we're going to the Greek Theater. You wouldn't believe somebody gave us tickets, front row seats to see somebody. I'm like, well, who? Some techno band or something, you know? No, Jethro Tull. And I'm like, what? And I've been thinking about if Jethro Tull came to St. Augustine trying to go see the group. But I don't know how many of the same guys are in. But I mean, as long as you got Ian Anderson, that's all that matters. Let me tell you what, Jethro Tull's in my top 10 of all time favorite bands. So we kind of texted back and forth for a little while, and it was funny because I started quoting her song lyrics and everything. She said she is going to get me a t-shirt, but I all of a sudden dawned on me, that was the first concert I ever went to in my life was Jethro Tull. I was in junior college. Friends of mine who I knew came and picked me up. Got in the back seat of the car. I dressed like I was going to church. I had like slacks on. The guy next to me had holes in his jeans, and I had a button-down shirt. I was such a nerd. I get in the back. I'm going to tell this story, but okay. I get in the back seat. The guy has a pack of Marlboros right there. He says he opens it up and he hands it to me, and I go, "Oh no, I don't smoke." And I look at it and I go, those aren't cigarettes. So anyway, we get to the concert, and at one point, Ian Anderson comes out in a bunny suit, and I was like, mind blown. Anyway, I love Jethro Tull. I think Ian Anderson is one of the great acoustic guitar players. Never mind flautist. He's very good at that. But they are one of my 10 favorite bands of all time. And I haven't heard from Jenny yet today to find out how good it was. But when she wakes up out in LA, I'll find out. And can't wait for my t-shirt. That'll be fun. All right, that's going to do it for another Duly Noted podcast brought to you by Titan MRI from the Meldon Law Gator Studios, especially here in the Dooley Dome. We always love doing it here on Thursdays. We're having a lot of fun doing it, and going to be a lot of fun tonight talking to the Fighting Gator Touchdown Club as well. Look forward to seeing those guys out there. I appreciate Zach for doing a great job as always, and we'll be back with another show Monday with Coach Spurrier. Until then, I am Pat Dooley saying I am deep, I am way back, and I'm out of here.